Right, before we start our next business, before we come to a statement updating the House on the Government's response to the humble address motion, I'd like to remind the House that Lord Peter Mandelson is the subject of an ongoing live police investigation. I understand that there is interest from the public on this matter, and there has been coverage, or much coverage, in the media. While the matter is not currently sub judice, I would gently say to members that it will be helpful to exercise a degree of restraint in referencing specific matters under investigation. I know the House will not wish to do anything that risks prejudicing this investigation. Secretary Jones.
With permission, Mr Speaker, I'd like to make a statement regarding the Government's response to the humble address laid before the House on the 4th of February. I committed to keeping the House updated. This is now my third statement on this issue, and I will continue to update the House throughout the process. Mr Speaker, I will first update the House on the work that is already being undertaken by the Government. I can confirm that work is ongoing across departments to search for and identify the material relevant to the humble address, and departments have been instructed to retain material which may be relevant to this motion. Given the breadth of the motion as drafted, this is clearly a process which will take some time. However, I want to reassure colleagues that officials have been working throughout the recess period and are expecting to compile information relating to the House's request very shortly. As the motion envisages, we are carefully assessing the material for whether any of it may be prejudicial to national security or international relations. The House will appreciate that this remains a sensitive matter, and the Government is committed to referring this material to the Intelligence and Security Committee. The Cabinet Office is leading this work in close cooperation with the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, in a process agreed by the Permanent Secretary of the Cabinet Office as delegated by the new Cabinet Secretary following her appointment by the Prime Minister last Thursday. The Government intends to publish documents in tranches instead of one publication at the end of the process, given that we are unable to confirm how long that process will take. On that basis, the Government expects to be able to publish the first tranche of documents very shortly in early March. I should, however, inform the House that it remains the case that a subset of this first tranche of documents is currently subject to the ongoing Metropolitan Police investigation. This includes correspondence between Number 10 and Lord Peter Mandelson, in which a number of follow-up questions were asked. Because of the Metropolitan Police's interest in this document, we are unable to publish it in early March in the first tranche, but will release it as soon as we're able to do so in consultation with the Metropolitan Police. There is also a small portion of that material which engages matters of national security or international relations, and thus the role this House has envisaged for the Intelligence and Security Committee. We are working with the committee to establish processes for making this material available to them, and we're very grateful to the committee in advance for their important contribution to reviewing these documents. Mr Speaker, I recognise the House will want to know about the next steps around the publication of the remainder of the information relevant to the motion that is not included in the first tranche. I would like to make it clear that anything we publish will be in line with our normal approach to publishing material in the House, such as redactions of junior officials' names and, where relevant, legal professional privilege. Further work is needed to compile the information in scope and conduct to conduct the necessary assessments. However, I can commit to the House that we will release this further material subject to the ongoing process with the Met Police and the Intelligence and Security Committee, and will continue to keep members updated as we make progress. I welcome the House's patience as the Government works swiftly to comply with the humble address. Mr Speaker, with your permission on a separate matter before I conclude, I understand there's been a high level of public interest in the news of Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor's arrest last Thursday and what may follow. The Government is clear that we are not ruling out action in respect of the line of succession at this stage, and we will consider whether any further steps are required in due course. It is vital, however, that we first allow the police to carry out their investigations. I know they will have the full support of the Government, and I'm sure this House as they do so. I will return to the House with further updates, as I've committed to do so, Mr Speaker, not just on this issue, but in relation to wider reforms to standards, lobbying, transparency and the removal of peerages in due course. And I commend this statement to the House.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Chief Secretary for the statement, which we received at 3:38 p.m, and gently suggest to him that the 45 minutes referred to in the Ministerial Code is a minimum rather than a target. On 4th of February, this House voted across parties for a humble address to be presented. That is not a polite suggestion. It is a formal command from Parliament to the Executive. Yet 3 weeks later, the Government's progress moves with the urgency of a tired sloth on a bank holiday Monday. Before the recess, my honourable friend from Brentwood and Ongar sent a comprehensive list of questions to the Cabinet Office. He received nothing back. Not a letter, not a postcard, not even an out-of-office reply. So let's try for some verbal clarity today. The Prime Minister previously staked the integrity of this process on the personal oversight of the Cabinet Secretary, and then he sacked him. Has the change in Cabinet Secretary caused a scoping delay, or is the Government simply using the handover as a convenient long grass to kick this into? Reports suggest a secret investigation into Lord Mandelson's conduct took place last September. My honourable friend asked about this on the floor of the House, and he asked again in writing, but silence. So, can the Chief Secretary tell us, does this report exist? If so, who wrote it? And will the Government stop playing hide-and-seek and publish it? The Government calls this an urgent review, yet the terms of reference remain as elusive as the coherent Treasury forecast. The Parliament Secretary to the Cabinet Office promised my honourable friend in the debate on the 4th of February that he would write with answers, yet there is still nothing. So can the Chief Secretary tell us, does the scope include the £241 million Ministry of Defence contract awarded to Palantir following Lord Mandelson's off-diary meetings? Does it cover Global Council? Or are we only looking at the bits of the noble Lord's Rolodex that aren't politically explosive? The Intelligence and Security Committee is being asked to help, yet its secretariat consists of Cabinet Office civil servants. Mr. Speaker, as the ISC itself warned last May, an oversight body should not be beholden to the very organisation it is supposed to be overseeing. So, if this is a genuine audit, what steps are being taken to ensure that the committee can operate without conflicts of interest when Cabinet Office staff considering material that relates directly decisions taken by the Cabinet Office itself? Mr. Speaker, you could not have been clearer. The police cannot dictate to this House. Yet the Government remains coy about the legal basis for withholding documents. So we need an unequivocal commitment today. Once the police are finished, every withheld page must be published. No excuses, no redactions by stealth. And in the meantime, any documents that are withheld from publication at the request of the police are handed to the ISC immediately, as you indicated after the debate. Finally, will the Chief Secretary commit to a Keeling-style register for all withheld documents? If the Government has nothing to hide, they should have no problem listing exactly what they are keeping from us and why. Mr. Speaker, the opposition has acted in good faith. We have been patient, but careful work must not become a euphemism for managed delay. This House gave a constitutional instruction on 4th of February. It is time the Government stopped treating Parliament like an inconvenient interruption to their schedule, stopped giving every impression that they have priorities working out who's back to cover, and started providing some actual answers so that we can start to get to the bottom of this murky matter.
Secretary Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Shadow Minister asked me a number of questions, which I will take in turn. The first, he asked me if the appointment of the new Cabinet Secretary had resulted in any delay or change to the process. The answer is no to that. The process has been led by the Permanent Secretary in the Cabinet Office, as delegated to her by the former and new Cabinet Secretary. He referred to a secret report. As far as I'm aware, there is no secret report, and all the documents will be published in the proper way. But he must recognise, Mr. Speaker, that we are trying to manage a criminal investigation by the Metropolitan Police, and I'm sure the House would not want us to inadvertently interfere with that process. That needs to be allowed to happen in the proper way. And we are working closely with the Intelligence and Security Committee to make sure that they are able to fulfil the requirements of the humble address and that we support them to do so. And whilst it's not for me to talk for the Intelligence and Security Committee, Mr. Speaker, the Shadow Minister questioned its independence, which I'm sure every member of it will very strongly refute, given that they honour their independence very strongly, and the government respects that entirely.
Andy McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm grateful to the right honourable member for his statement. And I do agree that the Prime Minister was quite right to put the load of the files outside of the tent. Eventually, he got there. But when it comes to this investigation, can he assure me that the $64,000 question about what was known at his time of his appointment to the US ambassador role will be put in the public domain? Because there are many people in this place and across the country who would not have touched Peter Mandelson with a barge pole, and they're trying to get their head round why on earth this government wasn't of the same view.
Secretary Jones.
I can confirm, Mr. Speaker, that those documents will be made available, subject, I'm afraid, to the exclusion of one particular item, which was number 10, asking Peter Mandelson a number of questions, which, as I say, the Met Police have asked to be held back, subject to their investigation. That will have to be published, therefore, at a later date, but the documents that are not subject to the Met Police investigation will be published very shortly.
Tom Morrison, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The victims of Jeffrey Epstein have always been and must remain at the forefront of our minds. The decades of abuse and suffering they endured can never be undone. And while nothing can erase that pain, we believe the recent decisions taken by the police and the government represent a step in the right direction. And we welcome the government has begun working to release the files relating to the role of Peter Mandelson. Parliament asked for transparency and the public deserves it. Earlier this month, my right honourable friend, the member for Kingston and Surbiton, called for a full statutory public inquiry into Jeffrey Epstein and his influence on the British political establishment. Only through an independent inquiry can we uncover the truth and deliver justice for the victims. So will the government support this call? And once again, allegations of sleaze and scandal cast a shadow over our politics. After a decade of misconduct and rule-breaking under successive governments, it is clear the current system is not fit for purpose. So can I ask the Minister, will the government finally commit to putting the Ministerial Code on a statutory footing, ensuring that breaches carry real consequence? And finally, will the Minister commit to protecting those who speak out by establishing a new Office of the Whistleblower, strengthening legal protections and increasing public awareness of whistleblowers' rights? Transparency, accountability and integrity in public life are not optional, they are essential.
Secretary Jones.
I thank the honourable member for his statement. In relation to investigations and inquiries, the House will know that the criminal investigation being led by the Metropolitan Police, I'm afraid at the moment takes primacy, because the House would not want to, and nor would the government inadvertently to interfere with that process. But the government agrees with the honourable member that it is important that people are held to account for their actions and that victims receive justice. He invites me to comment on some suggested reforms. As I've said to the House before, I'm very happy to consider them, in particular the proposals from the Liberal Democrat benches on whistleblowing. I think either the honourable member or his colleagues are due to write to me about that in due course. I would just say on the Ministerial Code, the Ministerial Code, as far as I can tell, is working, because there is an independent advisor who is very effective, advises the Prime Minister, and when there's a breach, ministers are removed from office. So I'm not entirely sure what a statutory footing would add in terms of additional value, given we've given the independence to the ethics advisor, and the code itself seems to be being applied very effectively.
Janet Daby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I firstly wish to share the sentiment expressed by many in this House, and my thoughts are with the hundreds of survivors of this horrific sexual abuse, and most of them children. The public rightly expect holders of high office to maintain a high level of conduct, and the Prime Minister rightly called for the removal of peerages from disgraced peers. Could the Chief Secretary confirm the Government is providing the police with the support it needs to progress the criminal investigation? Secretary Jones.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I can confirm to my honourable friend that the Government is complying and will continue to comply fully with the requests of the Metropolitan Police, in addition to the request from Parliament in relation to the humble address. And she is right to say that it's important that we do so in order to bring transparency and accountability to these most egregious actions.
Gale.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Could the Minister clarify whether or not the Cabinet Secretary's review into Lord Mandelston will be advised by the Cabinet Office Propriety and Ethics team? I ask, Madam Deputy Speaker, for two reasons. I think I'm right in saying it was the PET team that undertook the original so-called due diligence into Lord Mandelston. And second, in the light of the intervention by the Right Honourable Gentleman, the member of Hayes and Harlington, a few moments ago, about the involvement of the PET team in an earlier and unsavoury matter, I'm not sure that the House will have much confidence in that team.
Madam Deputy Speaker, my experience of the civil servants in the Propriety and Ethics team is unquestionable. They work extremely hard, they comply with the Civil Service Code, and they seek to ensure that government upholds all of the ethics and integrity rules that we are subject to. I have not in one instance seen any suggestion of poor performance or conflicts of interest in that team, and I wholeheartedly endorse their work.
Rachel Maskell.
Madam Deputy Speaker, Palantir is a client of Global Counsel, which was Peter Mandelson's PR agency, and clearly Palantir has benefited from lucrative contracts from the government. So will he ensure that all papers associated with Palantir are published as part of this inquiry?
Secretary Jones.
The documents that are published as part of the humble address will, of course, comply with the terms of the humble address. And I think, as I said to honourable members in the House before, if there are particular suggestions or concerns about specific Palantir contracts, those representations with our assistance, if helpful, should be made to the departments. But I have not seen any suggestion that there's been any breach of procurement rules in relation to the issues raised.
Julie Lewis.
In response to an earlier question about the role of the ISC in relation to the Cabinet Office, the Minister rightly said that the ISC is concerned about its independence. But I can vouch for the fact, as its former chairman, that it was particularly concerned about the dominant role in which the Cabinet Office had in its affairs. And my successor as chairman, in his annual report covering 2023 to 25, which was published on 15th of December last year, actually states that the committee in the last Parliament became very seriously concerned that the vital scrutiny which the ISC provides was being undermined by continued involvement by the Cabinet Office in the committee's office. The root of the problem lies in the control exerted over the committee's staff and resourcing by the Cabinet Office. This is an opportunity to let the ISC have what it has wanted and asked for years, which is independence from the Cabinet Office. Will the Minister take that message back, please?
Jones.
I think the Right Honourable Member is referring to 2023, which is, of course, before this government was in office. But I can confirm that we are in the middle of negotiations with the committee on a number of issues, partly in relation to its headcount, where we've increased the budget available to the committee for staffing. And I know that the question of whether those staff should be independently employed separately to the Cabinet Office is one that we're considering at the moment. But I would just remind the House, Madam Deputy Speaker, again, not that it's for me to speak on behalf of the committee, I'm sure the Right Honourable Member would agree, even though those staff are currently employed by the Cabinet Office, the work they do for the committee is exemplary, and the committee itself is very strongly independent of government.
Matt Bishop.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Chief Secretary for his statement. I welcome the comments from the Prime Minister calling for legislation to remove peerages from disgraced peers such as Mandelson. I hope he go even further and look at the line of succession in the royal family as well, and I welcome those updates. However, my constituents, victims, groups, everyone I speak to, it's great to hear the messages. They want to know when. So do we have any timescales of when this legislation is going to be brought forward to the House?
Secretary
Jones. We're working with the relevant advisors and departments at the moment to scope the bill itself and the measures that need to be brought forward in order for that to be effective. The legislation does raise a number of constitutional questions, which is taking some time for government to consider, because the last time peerages were removed, I think, was in the 1600s, so it's not been something that's been done recently. And so we just need to ensure that the scope and drafting of the bill is done in a way which means that it will be effective when it's brought forward to the House.
Christine Jardine.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. This is the second in a row statement that we've had, or urgent question in this House, about ethics and just exactly where tentacles of various organisations and individuals go within the government. So would the Minister accept that what we need is a statutory inquiry that looks very closely at the links and the interference of outside bodies in government and in the operation of government?
Jones.
I've already committed on behalf of the government, Madam Deputy Speaker, that we will review the current regime and rules in relation to transparency on lobbying. Some changes have been made recently in relation to the register and their declared interests, but my sense is that we could go further. And as I said in my statement, I'll come back to the House in due course to update the House on how we'll be able to take those reforms forward together.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Chief Secretary for his statement and coming again to the House to talk about this really important statement. And I can also add my thanks to the Intelligence and Security Committee for the work that they've done on this particular issue. And would the Chief Secretary agree with me that actually making sure we get this process right is what our constituents deserve, but also what the victims of these vile crimes absolutely deserve?
Secretary Jones.
I agree with my honourable friend, both in relation to the criminal investigation being conducted by the Metropolitan Police, where the government, of course, wants to support and collaborate with the Metropolitan Police to ensure that where justice can be found, that it must, but also in respect of the Intelligence and Security Committee, which is an important function in this House to support the work of Parliament. And we are currently working together to ensure that the processes and capacity is in place to honour the commitments in the humble address in a way that means that the House is served with these documents as quickly and as effectively as possible.
Dr Andrew Morrison.
Regular updates are all well and good and they're appreciated, but it's a classic Whitehall strategy for disguising managed delay. When we get tranche 1, will the Minister ensure that it is substantial and deal with the two key issues, which is the issue of what the Prime Minister knew at the point he appointed Mandelson, what the agencies and what Pett advised the Prime Minister in relation to Mandelson's connection with the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein at the point of appointment, and two, the details of this dodgy, shady-looking Palantir deal involving Alex Kane, the Prime Minister, and Peter Mandelson.
Secretary Jones.
I can confirm, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the first tranche of documents that will be released are the documents that government currently holds, subject to the exclusion of one document at the request of the Metropolitan Police, where subsequent questions were asked by number 10 of Peter Mandelson. That can only be released when the Metropolitan Police tell us it can be released, and subject to a review with the Intelligence and Security Committee of some individual line items which might be considered national security or international relations related as set out in the terms of the humble address. The subsequent tranches of information will come in due course because commissions have gone out across government for those departments to search their archives and databases to bring forward any documents that relate to the terms of the humble address. And given the depth of the issues raised in the humble address, that of course will take some time to process.
Brendan O'Hara.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Right now, trust in this chaotic government has all but evaporated, and the Prime Minister's personal judgment is now on trial. We know that millions of documents are still to come out, so the government really only has one chance to come clean, and any attempt to sanitise what is made public could have disastrous consequences for our democracy. So can the government guarantee that the criteria for releasing the information will be exactly what this House demanded, and that the appointment of a new head of the civil service will not alter that one iota?
The appointment of a new Cabinet Secretary has no bearing whatsoever on this process or the government's compliance with the humble address. And of course, as the honourable member would expect, the government will comply with the terms of the humble address.
Dr Ben Spencer.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. A particular additional concern I have with the appointment of Peter Mandelson was that the American government had compromising information in the form of the Epstein files, and that consideration as to the appointment of an ambassador who's going to go into sensitive negotiations with a foreign government, knowing that the government had compromising information. Can you confirm that those considerations and that information is in scope of the disclosures?
I'm not sure, Madam Deputy Speaker, which document specifically the honourable member refers to. I would just note that the documents that were released by the US Department for Justice and previously via Bloomberg in September 2025 were documents that the Prime Minister and the Government were not privy to until those disclosures had taken place.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to draw the House's attention to the Register of Interests and my declaration as connection with Whistleblowing UK, a not-for-profit organisation. Thank you. I'm really concerned that we still have no conclusion to the Public Office Accountability Bill. It seems to be stuck on Amendment 23, which is still being discussed. So I'm not sure how the Government's going to ensure that there are criminal sanctions, maybe against ministers who fail to whistleblow. And will the Minister commit to protecting whistleblowers by establishing a new independent office of the whistleblower so that the members of the public understand that they can have legal protections and much greater awareness of their rights about whistleblowing?
Jones.
I hear the very strong interest from the Liberal Democrat benches on the office for the whistleblower proposal. As I've said to her honourable friend, I'm very happy to look at those details when her colleagues write to me with them. In respect of the duty of candour bill, the Government's committed to bringing that back to the House as quickly as possible and for it to be completed in this session. We're just in the process of negotiations with the families and the intelligence agencies and the Intelligence and Security Committee on one final issue, and as soon as we've been able to resolve that, we hope to be able to progress the bill at pace.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. We must see these documents that pertain to the appointment of Peter Mandelson, but given that any member of the public could have told the Government that he was dodgy, it seems amazing that the Prime Minister requested that this vetting happen in the first place. This is not a question of process, it is a matter of judgment. Does the Minister believe that these documents will reveal why the Prime Minister's judgment is consistently so poor?
Secretary Jones.
I believe, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the documents will show that the Prime Minister was lied to by Peter Mandelson.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's very clear that the issue has been referred to the Intelligence and Security Committee, and it's very clear that they're going to be looking at issues of national security and international relations. I intervened on the debate on this, and you possibly heard that intervention. I want it to be very clear that in the event of them discovering commercial links of Mandelson to any company, including Palantir, but not excluding others, that they will also be pursued, and they're not going to be ignored because they don't necessarily immediately impact on the very narrow definition of national security and international relations.
Secretary Jones.
I thank the Right Honourable Member for his question. Of course, the Commission for Information from Departments, which is currently taking place, has not yet resulted in those documents being shared with the Cabinet Office. Once they are, if there are issues that need to be pursued further, of course we reserve the right to do so.
Danny Kruger.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I wish I had started counting at the beginning of this debate how often the Minister used the word process. The word that I've been listening out for and haven't heard him say is the word responsibility. Does he accept that it is the job of the Prime Minister to make all of these appointments without reference to backroom bureaucrats and lawyers? And should he not just now accept that he made a terrible mistake in respect to Peter Mandelson and do the right thing and reveal all the papers immediately?
Secretary Jones.
It's interesting to hear from the Reform benches, Madam Deputy Speaker, that they don't agree with process or vetting. But of course the Government is committed to both of those things because that's the way in which government should conduct itself. As the Prime Minister has already said at the dispatch box, had he had the information available to him at the point of appointment that we all do now, he would not have appointed Peter Mandelson. And on that basis, he has apologised for any distress that's caused for the victims of Jeffrey Epstein.
Jim Alistair.
If I understand the Minister correctly, he is saying that when it comes to the disclosure of documents, the Metropolitan Police will have an unquestioned discretion as to whether or not to disclose. Moving forward from that, if there then is no prosecution, presumably all those documents at that point would be disclosed. But if there is a prosecution, those documents which are relied on for that prosecution, one presumes, would not be disclosed until after the prosecution. But there would be a cadre of documents that are not being relied upon for the prosecution, but because they've been in the possession of the Metropolitan Police, will be subject to disclosure to the defence. At the point when the PPS decides they're not relying on them, will those disclosable documents be published?
Secretary Jones.
Madam Deputy Speaker, any documents that the Met Police tell the Government is related to their criminal investigations, we do not disclose until they tell us that they are available to be disclosed. That will be on the basis that they are not relevant to the prosecution or because the prosecution has been taken forward or otherwise. And I would just say, Madam Deputy Speaker, that I think the last thing that anyone would want in the House is for us to undertake a process that ultimately undermines a case should the CPS decide to bring it to the courts when we want proper justice to be delivered in the court. And that's why we're honouring the request of the Metropolitan Police in the pursuit of justice.
Final question, Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The question on all of our lips in this House and the lips of all this nation is, when will this ever end? And it's an eternal question. It is understandable that government will stagger the documentation. However, staggering must not be staging. So will the Minister once again reassure the members of this House and this nation that the time for covering has long passed and that openness and allowing the information to be understood is an essential component of trust is ever to be rebuilt? Thank you.
Jones.
I thank the honourable member for his question, and he's right that the government should publish these documents as quickly as possible, not just to comply with the humble address from this House, but to ensure that they are made transparent. And given that I'm unable to confirm to the House today how much information we will receive from government departments in relation to the Commission for Information, and as a consequence how long it would take both for that process to conclude, for the Metropolitan Police to release any documents, and for the Intelligence and Security Committee to conduct its work, I thought it was better that the government publish the documents as available as quickly as possible instead of waiting until the end of an undetermined period. And I hope that that suits the spirit as well as the letter of the humble address.
That is the end of that statement. I'll give the front benches a few moments to shuffle over.